but in our group, we had two of our members simultaneously writing sequels to Northanger Abbey, both of which were mysteries. And we're taking advantage of that lovely coincidence tonight with having Shannon Winslow and Diana Birchall speaking about their books. And I will turn this over now to Shannon.
Very good. Thank you, Abigail. And yeah, news from Northanger, A Tale of Two Sequels. And then we've got a bonus with Jack being with us today too, since he's got a Northanger book, Northanger Abbey book as well. So you get 3 for the price of 2 tonight. Anyway, yeah, this idea came from Diana months and months ago. We've gotten to be pretty good friends. And unlike a lot of my Jane Austen friends, I've actually met Diana. And so much so that I've been to her house and she's been to mine. So months ago, when we first discovered we were both working on Northanger Abbey sequels, Diana said, wouldn't it be great to do some kind of a program together about that? And so that's where it started. And then this event came along as the perfect venue to do so. So we're looking forward to talking back and forth to each other about our books and thoughts about Northanger Abbey, but also with you. And so we'll get started here. Let's see, what was I going to begin with? I was just going to introduce my book. I wish I had a beautiful copy, but it's so new. It's only been out. It's only come out this week, and so it has this lovely not for resale line spoiling the cover. But hopefully you've seen the real thing on the internet, or will soon. I was pretty excited with how the cover came out. I'd call it a mildly spooky sequel to Jane Austen's parody of the Gothic novel. And here is the little book blurb. Newly married to her beloved Henry, Catherine's eyes are now open to the grown-up pleasures of wedded life. Yet she still hasn't quite given up her girlhood fascination with all things Gothic. When she first visited Northanger Abbey, she only imagined dreadful events had occurred there. This time the horror is all too real. There's been a murder and Henry has fallen under suspicion. Catherine is determined to clear her husband's name, but at the same time she's afraid for her own safety, since there's a very good chance the real murderer is still in the house. And of course, that's the case. The real murderer is still in the house. So lots of fun and romance. And actually, I don't know if you can have a murder mystery that's light, but if there is such a thing as a light murder mystery, that's what I'd call this. Now, Diana's book is a little different. When we talked about doing this program, we agreed to read each other's books. And so her book is delightful, but it's quite different. I always think it's interesting that, two authors can start out with the very same idea and end up with completely different books. Is that the way you see it, Diana?
Absolutely. It's really remarkable. Our books are little like pendants, little jewels to each other. They are so complementary. You know, yours is a classic and accomplished and page turning, mystery, and a murder mystery, just really classic. And mine is more Gothic and weird and all sorts of strange things happening, but I mostly focus on the very down to earth relationship between the young couple. But you do that too. And that's what's, even though it's this, the outline of the story, it may not sound so different. And we inhabit the same world, the same Northanger Abbey world, the same Jane Austen world. And we're both pretty good at conveying it, for Austen-esque writers. And yet they're so very different. The person who reads one, I think, will be left wanting more. And guess what? They can have more because they go to the other one.
Good plan. Good plan.
Yeah.
Would you like to
do something now?
Yeah, go ahead and read the blurb.
Okay.
And show us your pretty cover.
My cover. Let's see. Is this showing up right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Perfect.
My cover, I've got to tell you, is this is a painting, a portrait by the famous French 19th century painter, Vigée Lebrun. And when I saw that portrait, I said, that's my Catherine. This is a French aristocrat painted in the same year as Northanger Abbey was written. The girl's 18, just like, like around the Catherine's age. And I just love her picture. The Abbey itself down there was painted by Constable. And it is Netley Abbey, where Jane Austen visited. And it has this Gothic history with the monks living there, and it was being despoiled, during Henry VIII's time. And the monks made a curse on the new family who came to live there. And the curse is in my book. So here's the blurb. A happier heroine than Catherine Morland does not exist in England, where she is about to marry her beloved, the handsome, witty Henry Tilney. The night before the wedding, Henry reluctantly tells Catherine and her horrified parents a secret he has dreaded to share, that there is a terrible curse on his family and their home, Northanger Abbey. Henry is a clergyman, educated and rational, and after her year's engagement, Catherine is no longer the silly young girl who delighted in reading horrid novels. She has improved in both reading and rationality. This sensible young couple cannot believe curses are real until a murder at the Abbey triggers events as horrid and Gothic as Jane Austen ever parodied, events that shake the young Tilneys' certainties, but never their love for each other. And also on the back of the book, Devaney Lucer has written, with keen powers of observation, discernment, judgment, fire, genius, and wit on every page. So I like that review. And another one more, indulge me. In Jasna News, the reviewer said, I can give no higher praise to a book than that it kept me absorbed and entertained in the middle of a pandemic. So there we are. And yours does too. And these are good things to do in the middle of these times.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Everyone's had said, well, you must be getting so much writing done. And yet I really haven't been getting much writing done because I was at the end of a book. So I was doing other things, but people have been reading more, which is always a good thing. And Jack says, you girls are the stars. I'm only, what did you say you were, Jack? Anyway.
I'm backup.
You're backup? Okay.
He should tell about his book too.
Absolutely. That's what I jump in here and give us a line.
Well, mine's going to be very different. I'm known for two things, which one of them is actually writing sequels. So my book is actually a sequel to Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. I also like to reform rakish characters. I'm kind of well known for my take on Caroline Bingley. Well, this one, I kind of use Captain Frederick Tilney as my main character. The other thing is I'm king of the crossovers. So with that said, the last adventure of the Scarlet Pimpernel. And the blurb here says, Jane Austen's Fighting Men, Book 2. The worlds of Jane Austen and the Baroness Orze combine in a swashbuckling tale from the author of The Three Colonels. Captain Frederick Tilney, dashing cavalry officer and rakish heir to Northanger Abbey, is interested only in fencing and carousing. That is, until he meets the girl of his dreams, the lovely and intriguing Violet Blakeney. However, her father is not convinced of Frederick's pledge to reform, and the officer is banished from Violet's presence. The baronet has a will of iron, for he is none other than Sir Percy Blakeney, the retired Scarlet Pimpernel. Now, during the 100 Days crisis, an evil from the Pimpernel's past menaces the Blakeney family, while Sir Percy is crippled by age. Frederick must convince the baronet to accept his assistance in accomplishing the impossible, take on an entire country to rescue the girl they both love.
Well, Jack is well known for his love of history and how he likes to combine historical fact with Jane Austen fiction. So yes, a different take entirely. But we do have one thing in common, the three of us, and that is that we're all fans of Northanger Abbey. Any author knows it takes months and months and months of work to produce a book, and so none of us would have set out to write Northanger Abbey sequels if we didn't, enjoy the book and find it interesting. So Unfortunately, Northanger Abbey isn't as popular as Pride and Prejudice, but it's completely worthy of equal attention and respect. Diana, I was, when preparing for this, I looked at one of your old posts on Austen variations, and you wrote something interesting about that. You said something about, if Northanger Abbey isn't your favorite Austen book, I hope to persuade you differently. You want to give us a little, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's true that it has enormous charm and humor, which I love, and lightness, but perhaps not the same weight of thought and complexity and workmanship as her more mature works. But it's delightful. And I think if people don't like it or don't love it as we do, it's just because they haven't reread it enough. You know,
I think delightful is a very good word to describe it, because it is light and fun, and you know, and her sense of humor is wonderful in it. It's, if you've read some of Jane Austen's juvenile works, I think Northanger Abbey makes a natural bridge between the juvenile works and her more mature novels. And one of the lines, it's, I can't get through chapter 1 without laughing. I really can't. No matter how many times I've read it. One of the lines in there is, a family of 10 children will always be called a fine family, where there are heads and arms and legs enough for the number. I don't know, maybe it's...
No, she can't help being funny with almost every turn of phrase, that woman.
So yeah, I laugh every time, and I imagine she must have laughed when she wrote that line. And so I like to think our senses of humor are similar anyway.
Yeah.
She really, you know, she wrote it very young, in her early 20s. It was the first full novel that she wrote, even though it was not published until after her death. So I think when you keep that in mind, it kind of helps to explain and make us appreciate its place in the Austen canon, and especially its young and somewhat naive heroine, because Austen was very young when she wrote the book herself. So it's, you know, full of youthful fun and you know, and the spoofing the Gothic novels that were so popular at the time.
I'm not sure that modern readers like that part that much. You know, they sort of think they read that once and she's made her point and it's enough. But you know, there's a lot there. It was fun reading, particularly some of the Gothic novels, like the Anne Radcliffe ones, in preparing to invent some Gothic events. And this was really one of her few places in a novel where she breaks into literary parody and criticism like that. And I found that it was fun to actually have Gothic incidents in the novel, and to bring them to life themselves. And there's quite a lot of bizarre events, Gothic ghouls, you know, ghosts and grotesques in my book. But at the same time, what leavens it, what balances it, is that it wasn't so much the Gothic literary playfulness that I found most appealing about Northanger Abbey. It was actually the central relationship when it comes down to it. And it always puzzled me. I think a lot of people feel this way. They can never quite understand why or how an unusually clever man like Henry Tilney, so bright, so funny, so witty, so educated, could fall in love with such a young, naive, uneducated bit of a goose as Catherine was. And Jane Austen carefully says she's not some great sexy beauty either, just sort of nice, average looking girl. And I wanted to explore that, you know, psychologically and realistically and romantically. And I found there was lots of meat to do that. And oddly enough, a few hundred miles apart, you were doing something similar, but different, similar but different.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to put in a plug for Henry Tilney. Well, you just did. You said he's a reading and educated man, but you know, what woman doesn't love a sexy guy who can also keep you laughing? You know, he's
my man. Yeah.
Huh?
He's my man. Better than Mr. Darcy.
Okay. You're on team Henry Tilney. Yeah. And you're not alone there, Diana. I think it's really interesting. I posted on my own website /blog, I posted something recently that's a clip from the book, and I entitled it, Who Knew Henry Tilney Was Such a Passionate Guy? and I must have said the magic words because that post has been the most popular post on my blog ever. So, I know there are other Henry Tilney fans out there.
Yeah. And
Well,
the
I'm
thing
as
is,
the resident guy in this group. I'm going to take a shot at old Henry.
Uh-oh.
I believe that practically everything you say about Henry Tilney, to my opinion, is true except for one point. And this is what I think takes the book, Northanger Abbey, from kind of pedestrian to up there as good as anything that Austen wrote, is that for all of Tilney's cleverness, he was fooled by his father as well. And at the end of the book, he has to admit to to Catherine that he was shocked and surprised at just how bad his father was. It surprised even him. And during the book, especially when they're at Northanger Abbey, when he and Eleanor are there with Catherine, and Eleanor's forced to meet with her lover in secret, Tilney spends a lot of time excusing his father. It's only after the general pulls one of the worst things you could do, taking a young girl and literally throwing her to the wolves, throwing her out of the house in the middle of the night, putting her on a post carriage where she could have been attacked or worse, that the blinders fall off of Tilney's eyes. And he is finally forced to confront his father. So that realism in the character is what takes him, I think, at a much higher level, in my opinion, as a guy, and also reaffirms what a great writer Austen was.
yeah, that was my realization when I came to really trying to examine and understand what he saw in Catherine. And what he saw in her was what Jane Austen says, open, candid, artless, guileless. That's what he liked about her. And why did he like that? Because she was so refreshing, like a sweet drink of water, after having a father who had bullied and brutalized him all his life. I don't think, as you point out, I don't think he really realized how bad his father was until he saw his actions. But he certainly he was an abused child. He and his sister both. They had a tough time with that man, that ogre.
I would put Captain Tilney in that list as well.
Probably, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why he likes Catherine,
When Jack, you say that, he had to learn things too. He wasn't that smart. He had to figure out his father. Right. And I had a lot of fun making him eat his words. You remember where it says in the novel, he's telling Catherine, this is England.
Yes, you did make him eat the words
here. Yeah. And of course, my book is titled Murder at Northanger Abbey. So yes, murder. And he has to admit, I was wrong about that, dear. You were right after all. Let's see. Diana, you want to tell us a little about your specific inspiration? You told me the story the other day. And
that was funny. Yeah, okay. Well, it was the 2011 JASNA AGM in Portland, which was, the theme was Muslims, mayhem, and murder at Northanger Abbey. And that was a wonderful, meeting, and it inspired me to try to write a Northanger Abbey sequel. And I got about 3 chapters in and had some thoughts of this, some rough outline, but I got distracted by something else and went on to something else. I thought, oh, well, nobody reads really. Everybody wants Darcy, and I just dropped it. And then 10 years later, 2019, when I saw that the next conference was going to be on Northanger Abbey, I said, what's the matter with you? Get this thing finished, and have it at the conference. And so I finished it up really quickly last summer, in the blessed year pre-pandemic of 2019, and brought it to the AGM, where it was a bestseller, one of the 3 best-selling books at the AGM. It was
excellent timing. Excellent timing.
Yeah, well, that was really deliberate. I had to go work very hard and very fast, and I couldn't have done it if Abigail's daughter hadn't helped with the editing and the cover design and everything.
Well, yeah, I asked you about inspiration, and a deadline can be a wonderful inspiration.
Oh, it's the only one that works for me. Yeah, so that was how. And then,
Jack,
what about you?
have
How did you
anything to
get
say
your,
on-
where did your inspiration come from?
Well,
Yeah.
it's when I was writing The Three Colonels. I'm going to probably explain a little bit more about this tomorrow, but it was my intention to not only explore the totality of the 100 Days Crisis, but also I wanted to write something about most, if not all, of Jane Austen's works. I wanted to effectively try to do a sequel to all of them. Well, so that's where my purpose was to write a sequel to Northanger Abbey. And let's face it, unless you have a murder mystery, what can you do with Henry and Catherine? I mean, it's just happily ever after. It's as hard as writing a sequel about Elizabeth and Darcy. So you got to reform somebody if you're going to do something like that. So that's where I got the idea of fixing Captain Tilney, who I didn't really think was all that bad compared to with all the other baddies that Austen was thrown at us. So I saw the opportunity, and because he was also in the military, because that was the other point of Jane Austen's fighting men, is to tie in the military figures that Austen wrote about in her work. So he was the logical person to utilize in that. And at the same time, for some reason, I looked up the Scarlet Pimpernel, and when Barris Orsi wrote it and realized that his adventures happened during the French Revolution, during the Reign of Terror, and then I did some math. Hey, I'm a business major. I can actually add. And I figured out that if the baronet really lived, he'd be about 56 years old at around 1815. I went, wow, I can put him in a book. So that's kind of was the genesis of The Last Adventure of the Scarlet Pimpernel, to talk about, to have a chance to take a little bit of Orsi in there, which you really need to read that. I mean, the movies are great, but you got to read what the Baroness wrote, because they're wonderful, they're fantastic, and you really get to appreciate the character that she created and all the characters that she created. But it also gave me an opportunity to talk about age and to have a hero that's not of 24 or 21 or 29, but he's actually 56. He's suffering from rheumatism, but his mind is as sharp as ever. So that was the whole point of that. Kind of got the juices going, and that's where the Last Adventure came from.
Well, that's something else we have in common, Jack. We hadn't talked about this before, but that's what I was going to say, is that since I love all 6 of Austen's books, it's long been a goal of mine to write at least one novel related to each of her books. And so, I've got Pride and Prejudice covered. Not that I won't write more Pride and Prejudice, but I've already got 4 books related to Pride and Prejudice. And for Persuasion, I've got The Persuasion of Miss Jane Austen. And I consider my time travel book, Leap of Hope, to be my Mansfield Park book, although it has elements of the other stories in it as well. And so that left me 3, and I've been thinking about the Northanger Abbey book, and every once in a while rolling around in my mind. Diana, you said yours took a long time to come to fruition. I went back and I found an old blog post from 2014 where I discussed the possibility of writing it. So I think I'm a better procrastinator than you are.
No, 2011. 2011 was the Jasmine AGM. There's no procrastinator bigger than me.
I guess you do have me beat. Sorry.
Yeah. Nothing to be proud of.
Anyway, so, it seemed to me, as you say, Jack, it's difficult to write a sequel to a happily ever after. And so I thought, well, that would be absolutely perfect as writing a murder mystery, and letting, Catherine put her that tendency to good use for a change. And so anyway, plus every book that I've written is different, and there's always a new challenge in every book. And so it was, I didn't know if I could write a murder mystery, but I had so much fun doing.
I would have thought you'd written a lot of them. I mean, you
Oh,
really
no.
do it with such, suavity and ease.
Oh,
Yeah, I kept reading it thinking she can plot, that woman can. You know,
well, that's one
it
person
seemed effortless. Yeah.
who, well, believe it or not, I didn't really know who had done it until halfway through the book. Seriously, it's kind of like Gosford Park in that way. If you've seen that movie, there's
Yeah.
a house full of people because General Tilney is giving a ball on Halloween night, of course, because it has to be spooky. And so there's the house is full of people. Everybody has a motive, and I've toyed with different scenarios, and I didn't really settle for sure who done it until like I was halfway through the book. So I doubt if most mystery writers go about with that technique, though.
Yeah, it kind of happened to me too, I think. The funny thing is, of course, that we killed off the same person.
Yes,
I won't say who now to spoil the plot, but it
Right.
is funny. It's just so obvious, I guess.
I thought that was amusing too, that we both settled on the same person who needed to die first. In your book, first and only in my book. So
Yeah, mine has a little bit of gore, but to take away from the gore, it was and the gothic and all that. Um, I was so interested in the development of their relationship during their engagement and how she matured. The maturation of Catherine was really my big theme, because during that year I figured he educated her. He gave her things to read and discussions, and they corresponded. And people grow up a lot between 17 and 18 too,
Absolutely.
mentally, and I think since she was exposed to so much more thinking and education in that year, she consequently became a more interesting wife for Henry. And in the beginning, at the end of Northanger Abbey, you might think, isn't he going to be bored with her? Is this going to be a Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Bennet thing? But always Catherine had better sense than Mrs. Bennet. And you could tell from her sensible mother. But her sensible mother wasn't a great intellectual either. And I think that having Henry loved to teach, and Catherine loved to learn. And I was very interested in that.
yeah, yeah. Well, of course, it has to be all about the relationship between them, and
Yeah.
whatever else is going on.
And
And
you did the same way. The balance between the plot with the murder and the gothic craziness and it comes back down to such an enchanting pair.
yeah,
They are such a wonderful set of characters, and to see them grow, to make them grow, as us as writers making them grow,
right.
wasn't it fun?
Yes, it was tremendous fun.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I've got at least
We have
one
if you
review.
want to jump in here, we have a question on the YouTube channel. Do either of you see Henry Tilney's education of Catherine as comparable to Edmund Bertram's education of Fanny Price?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the main difference is that he does it with such lightness and humor. Edmund is always so drably serious and solemn, and Fanny has not 1 ounce of humor in her, which is probably why she's Austen's least favorite character. But Henry is a wonder. Wouldn't you like to have had Henry Tilney as a teacher?
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
could be laughing and make it interesting.
Yeah, and their relationship, as I said, he loves to teach her, and she loves nothing but to as much as listening and sitting at his feet. But that's true. That is what Fanny felt about Edmund too. I wonder if that derives from maybe one of Jane Austen's older brothers.
Huh.
If she had an experience like that with her brothers teaching her. I bet she did.
That's a very good theory.
Yeah.
Very good theory. Yeah, I never thought about
I
any.
never thought about it till this minute
Yes.
either. But she had these older brothers who'd been to Oxford, and she surely learned a lot about the world and everything from them. Yeah.
Well, let's see. I was thinking about as I was reading through your book, Diana. I was, making a mental note or having a good chuckle over everything that I came across that, was either similar or different. And so I made note of a few.
Oh, good. This I want to hear. Go ahead.
Well, both stories featured Eleanor and her new Viscount husband, but we chose different names for the men.
Yeah, that would be psychic if we had the same names for
Yeah,
the man.
that would be a little bit too
A
freakishly.
little much, yeah.
Yeah, so he's Charles in your book and he's Jonathan in mine. And both books coincidentally had a Henry VIII reference, which
Oh.
maybe is not too shocking.
No, considering that that's how the Abbey got despoiled. That's
Right.
just history, that is.
Well, in my book, this isn't giving away too much. It's, it's a masked ball, or it's a
Yeah.
fancy dress ball.
That was a brilliant touch.
And and General Tilney dresses up as King Henry VIII. So there's my
Perfect. Perfect.
anyway. Let's see what else. Oh, I thought the biggest coincidence and the most improbable thing was that at some point in each of our books, we both call Catherine a genius. Maybe if you haven't got to the end, you might not have seen that yet.
I did
Diana.
read your whole book. I don't remember it, and I don't even remember saying it myself.
Well, you said it.
Okay, I believe you.
And let's see, it's the very last line in my book.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly, said Henry when they paused for breath. Genius, pure genius.
You're genius.
So,
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, who would have thought that both of us would call Catherine, who's probably the least thought of as a genius?
Well, I don't know about
And then,
that.
Huh?
We're talking
What's
about
that?
Austen's, because there's a question on here talking about reflecting Catherine and Tilney's relationship with that of Emma and Knightley.
Oh,
Hmm.
well, yeah. No, Emma and Knightley is even a much bigger age gap.
Big age gap. Yeah.
Well, and then there is the factor of Knightley teaching Emma.
Yeah, and also both Knightley and
Correct.
Edmund brought their girls up, which is a little creepy maybe. But Henry didn't bring her up. He met her when she was at a ball, in the bath. When
I think it's more of an intellectual bit rather than
Yeah.
age difference.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, the turn of their minds was completely different. Emma and Mr. Knightley. I haven't figured out I have to do a Sense and Sensibility and an Emma book still, and I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do for those.
I've done an Emma. I've done my Mrs. Elton, in defense of Mrs. Elton. But I haven't done a Sense and Sensibility. No.
I'm still thinking on that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see. I had one more thing I wanted to.
Yeah, what were the similarities or what?
Yeah, well, kind of. I think it's kind of a fun fact, I call it, that you had a character in your book named Dr. Lyford who attends various sick and dying people in Northanger. And of course, there was a real life Dr. Lyford who was Jane Austen's doctor when she was
That's where I got the name.
at Winchester and in her final illness. So yes, I assumed, but I wanted to ask you, is that where you got your name?
Yeah.
And then the other,
He got
I don't-
around.
I don't use Dr. Lyford in this book, but I have used him. He is a character in my Persuasion book, The Persuasion of Miss Jane Austen. There it is. Show off the cover. He plays himself,
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting that we both have.
But it is a delight how, the two really do set each other off. It's not at all the same experience, even though they're the same materials, some of them,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a whole different experience. And,
Well,
after
and I
many
just-
years, I'd want to read mine and vice versa. I really would.
From the page one, I so enjoyed your style of writing and thinking, how similar in some ways and yet different. I could tell it was not my book, it was your book.
Absolutely.
I just
Yeah.
love the
Yeah.
hearing your voice.
You hear you, Shannon, and you hear me in mine. And that
Yeah.
makes us good Austen-esque writers.
Yay.
Oh, excuse me saying so. And Jack is himself, We're also individual.
Thank God. As my
Yeah.
wife says anyway.
Yeah. Were we going to read a little?
Yes, we were going to do that, and that's coming up now. And who wants to lead off? I'll let you guys fight it out.
Ladies first.
Unless there's any questions or something that need to be answered at
Oh,
this
yeah.
point.
I'm looking at the questions. We've got them pretty much ahead of them right now, so we can entertain the
Okay.
masses.
Yeah, because we want to get through the reading so we'll have time for questions.
Okay, absolutely. Go for it then.
Okay. It is the happiest day I ever spent, Catherine declared, as they sat down to tea at their own table, spread with their own new china set, General Tilney's wedding present, which Catherine had not before seen. He was a connoisseur in china, as in many other things, and Catherine could not but admire the delicate golden white dishes and cups in their prettiness and abundance, however empty was the sentiment behind the sending. Happiness is a very proper state in a new bride, observed Henry, and I may take the opportunity to tell you that I am happy too. Upon my word, my father did us well. That is a set that might last us all our lives, even if we have so large a family as yours. Catherine blushed again at this reference, and then felt it ungracious to have a secret hope that using the china would not always make her think of the giver. The gold leaves are very pretty, she said, taking up a cup. I never saw anything like these little symbols woven round the edges. Do they signify anything, do you think? I don't know. I had not observed, said Henry, examining a saucer closely. You're right, however. They look almost like letters, do they not? Not in any language I ever saw. Is it Russian? Is it Hebrew? Is it Arabic? Henry squinted at length and finally said, Now, I perceive they are English letters, but they are so very small. I do not think they can possibly be read without a magnification glass. We have not one here. I should have to send to Cambridge for such a thing. Well, I wish you would. If there is some secret writing on our china, I should like to know what it says. Do you think your father knows about it? Most certainly. My father does nothing without deliberation. And he had this china made up especially for you. He told me so in the letter that accompanied it. I can't comprehend what he means by this. Perhaps the letters are a motto of some sort, suggested Catherine. My mother has a set of plates that have a blessing on them, and the words, hunger is the best sauce. Somehow I feel it is not that, said Henry dryly. The eyes of the young husband and wife met. 'Tis very strange, said Catherine. Are you quite sure you cannot make out any words at all? I could not, but then I only know English. It does not look like anything else, said Henry doubtfully. It might be Latin, but so tiny. Does this look like the letter T to you? Not very much. Oh, yes, perhaps it might. I think it is English. T-C-I something L-A-M, I believe, only the size of pinpoints. But that does not mean anything, Henry. I cannot tell, he said slowly, but I think the letters may be written backwards. Then it could be Maledict? No, surely not. I cannot make out any more. He put the saucer down rather hard. That does not sound much like a blessing, Catherine faltered. The young couple sat silent as they each thought of what the words might mean and what was the opposite of a blessing. I suppose I must write to thank your father, said Catherine reluctantly. But Henry, I hope you will not take it amiss if I say I prefer not to use this set of china. No, I'd like to break every piece, he said savagely. Goodness, how glad I am that we need not make our home at Northanger, she said low. That's my excerpt.
Yes, that very tiny writing. I remember that part. Jack, you were going to share a little bit with us?
Okay, I have part from chapter 1. Frederick has just gotten finished with his latest duel, and he is there with his good friends, my Dark Darcy, Sir John Buford, and George Blakeney, the son of Sir Percy Blakeney. In frustration, Sir John Buford threw his hat into the far corner of the room he shared with Captain Frederick Tilney during their visit to Oxford. Frederick laughed. Come, Buford, no cause for all that. We'll say we had an excellent time here. Good food and wine, good friends. He patted George Blakeney on the back. Pretty girls with which to dance. Even a bit of sport. Better than dreary old Bath, that's for certain. Sport? Buford turned to Frederick. You call this morning sport? Why, yes, you did not really think I was in any danger from that young buck Paisley, did you? And what do you call his brother's actions? Good Lord, Frederick, I was almost forced to shoot him. I nearly killed a boy because you cannot keep from behaving badly with women. Frederick, affronted, protested. Buford, I did not. Frederick, tell me the damn truth, all of it. Frederick composed his lips and turned to the window. I met Isabella Thorpe in Bath during that time my brother Henry was courting Catherine Morland. Miss Thorpe was attractive and welcoming. I danced with her and called on her several times. He gestured. Supposedly, she was engaged to Catherine's brother James at the time. Supposedly? Very well, she was betrothed, but she did not behave as though she was. Gad, Buford, the chit threw herself at me. She did not break things off with James Morland because of my pretty face. No, it was because James was poor and I was the heir to Northanger Abbey. If any attempted seduction was going on, it was on Miss Thorpe's part. She wanted to secure me by arranging a compromise. I was fortunate to extract myself. I believe James owes me a debt of gratitude. Buford stared at his friend. And now she has the young Sir Percy Blake. He's wealthy enough. So why last night's performance? I do not know. I can't read the light skirt's mind. George Blakeney, who has been standing silent witness to the discussion, finally spoke. It is said hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Perhaps it is no more than that. Frederick laughed. I see you are not sleeping during your classes, George. You may be right, Blakeney, said Buford slowly. Or perhaps Miss Thorpe was unsure of her position with Sir Robert and felt she needed assurance that he would have to honor his engagement. He raised an eyebrow. What? By fighting me? Buford nodded. Of course, he would be more honor bound to her than ever if he had killed you. Frederick's jaw dropped. The thought had never occurred to him. That whore! You now see where your actions have brought you? Buford demanded. My actions? Oh, come now, Buford. Yes, your actions. If you would stop flirting with every pretty woman in every room you walk into, you would not get into these scrapes. I'm tired of coming to your rescue. At Frederick's incredulous look, Buford counted on his fingers. Ellen Peabody, Mary King, Lady Joanne Barksdale, Annabella Adams, Charlotte Davis. Frederick cut him off. You don't have to name them all, Buford. Besides, you are no better. Instead of laughing it off, as Frederick had expected, Buford grew even grimmer. You are right, Frederick. I was as big a scoundrel as you, even worse, but no more. I have seen the error of my ways. I have vowed to honor my father and my fallen comrades by being a gentleman. No more dallying, no more assignations. Assignations. I have thrown off all my unworthy acquaintances. I shall live honorably, and the next woman I bed shall be my wife. Recalling their past shared adventures, Frederick was incredulous. Bold words, my friend. You think this is a joke? Open your eyes, Frederick. Do you not see the path of unhappiness you are upon? With a cry, Buford threw up his hands. If you do not understand, then we have nothing more to say to each other. What do you mean? Intense blue eyes bore into his. I have said I have thrown off all my unworthy acquaintances. Until you reform your ways, Captain Tilney, we must part. Frederick stepped back, hurt to the quick. Since entering the army together, the two had been inseparable. Now one of his best friends was cutting all ties. The bile of betrayal rose in his throat. As you wish, Sir John. Unable to help himself, he added, knighthood has surely changed my jolly companion. Buford paused on the way to his room to pack. Not knighthood, Captain, but war. Farewell. He softly closed the bedroom door behind him. Frederick stared at the door, stunned by what had happened. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. Do not worry, Frederick, George said in an attempt to console him. Buford is just angry. He's still upset over what happened with Paisley. Mark my words, he will apologize. Frederick shook his head slowly. No, he will not. In all the years I have known him, I have never seen John Buford take back his words. Never. George patted his shoulder. Let's get some breakfast, eh? I'm a bit peckish. Frederick sighed and with a bit of false humor said, Sounds, but that's a capital idea, George. Lead the way. They were having their second cup of coffee when Sir John stepped into the post carriage for London without taking his leave of them. Sure, as you can see, our boy Freddie's got a ways to go.
Well, you know, Jack, as I was listening, I did discover that we have one similarity, as I pointed out all the similarities between my book and Diana's. You have somebody in your book named Peabody, and so do I. Probably about the only similarity.
I can't think of any similarities. Yeah.
No sword fighting or dashing to save damsels in distress, eh? Okay.
No.
But it's very intriguing. You might have hooked me.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to do a little reading. It's kind of in a two-parter. One thing that I had fun with in this book is that since the couple is married, and you know, I had a little fun playing around with a little sexual innuendo. I have to admit that. My books are very clean, as you would call them, and so it's completely PG. But
It was perfect. It was so romantic, and so you really felt the love.
well, thank you, Diana. So yes, this first little bit, I wanted to give you a sample of that, and this is in chapter 3. Yeah, chapter 3. They're getting ready for the ball that I've mentioned before. And as most women would do when they're prepared for the ball, you want your husband to reassure you that you look good. So Catherine's, asked Henry, does she look all right? Basically. And he says, step back, my dear, and turn round once or twice, slowly, so that I can obtain a comprehensive view. That's it. Once more. Now let me look at you. Facing him again, Catherine nervously awaited his assessment. Henry started at her feet, where the toes of her white dancing slippers could just be seen peeking out from under her lace-trimmed hem. The gown itself was a pale pink muslin, her best, he knew. Notice how Henry still understands muslins here. But nobody else would recognize it, with the way the sleeves had been cleverly remade and with the new gauzy overlay she had added to the skirt. His perusing eyes moving upward, they stopped and held at Catherine's exquisite décolletage. He watched, for a moment spellbound by the quickened, rhythmic rise and fall of the rounded fullness there as she breathed in and out. Henry, is something amiss? Catherine inquired, her hand moving self-consciously up her gown and coming to rest in a protective way over the area that had apparently caught his attention. You have made a change here, I think, he said, stepping close enough to run an inquiring fingertip along the inside rim of her low neckline. Yes, she said uncertainly. Yes, I removed the lace that used to be tucked in behind. You see, I thought, but maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it is too much. Oh dear, do you think I'd better put it back? It can be done in the work of only 15 minutes if you advise it. Rousing himself, Henry shook his head. No, not at all. Speaking as much of her modest endowment as of the cut of her neckline, he added, in my opinion, it is neither too little nor too much. It is exactly right. That is, unless you mind people looking, because men will surely look, my darling, and I dare say they will all envy me as well. I'm sure they will do no such thing, said Catherine, extremely pleased nonetheless. I tease you not, my dear. Moving close and beginning to nuzzle her neck, he continued absently, but must we go to this ball? I should much rather keep you all to myself. Stop that, Henry, said Catherine, with a half-hearted attempt at sternness. We have sent our acceptance to the invitation, and we must certainly go to the ball. And then we're going to pick up the action in a little bit later as they're on their way in the carriage. They knew not General Tilney's true intentions in giving this ball, or how events would transpire. In many respects, they were walking blind. Initially, that seemed part of the adventure, the thrill of the unknown. And for the first half of the journey, Catherine felt quite as happy as a young lady on the way to a ball can be supposed to feel. However, doubts and forebodings began building inside her breast as they approached the place of her prior mortification. Northanger, she cruelly reminded herself, was where she had been embarrassed by Henry's discovering her foolish imaginings about his mother's death and so much more, not to mention his father's unceremoniously ordering her from the house. Dreadful. Henry had well and truly forgiven her. Of this she was confident. But she could not entirely forgive herself, and would not enjoy being reminded of these things again at every turn. Down this dim passageway I imagined a ghostly presence. In this room my foolish fancy made secret manuscripts out of ordinary laundry bills. Up those stairs I crept without permission, thinking I should discover some mystery of Mrs. Tilney's demise. Catherine shook her head resolutely. She must not allow her mind to stray down those dark corridors again. She silently but earnestly vowed that this time she would keep a firm grip on reality, not imagining ghosts and murder plots round every corner. She would not tremble with equal parts excitement and alarm at every unexplained sight or sound as she had done before. She further pledged that she would remember only the good from her previous visit to Northanger. There were many good things to remember, after all, most particularly that it was at Northanger where the first attraction between Henry and herself had ripened into love. That single fact overpowered all the others. She would look forward to what could be built on that foundation, not backwards to her childish mistakes. Henry, who sat close beside her, holding her hand, gave her a quizzical look. "You are oddly quiet, my dear Catherine," he said. "Where is your enthusiasm for this ball that you have been overflowing with these many days? Have you exhausted your supply just before we have need of it? We will be at Northanger in only a few minutes more." "Yes, I know," Catherine said, trying to sound more calm and confident than she really was. "I recognize the landmarks along the way. It is nothing more than a small attack of nerves, I assure you." Then all her pretenses failed, and she turned pleading eyes on her husband. "Oh, Henry, suppose your father still hates me. I do not think I could bear it. Or suppose I do something unforgivably stupid again. I suddenly have the most fearful presentiment of catastrophe." Henry laughed and pulled his wife closer. "What could possibly happen tonight that would justify all this anxiety? It is a ball, after all, which is hardly a matter of life and death. The worst that can happen at a ball is somebody forgets the steps to the allemande, breaks a plate at the supper, or discovers her gown has a tear." "I suppose you're right." But a moment later she continued just the same. "Perhaps we should have made more of an effort with our attire. We may be the only people there in ordinary evening wear. A mask alone does not quite constitute fancy dress. And the invitation did specify—" Catherine, be easy," said Henry, not waiting for her to finish her long list of misgivings or to build her mountain of worries any higher. "I care not what the invitation says. I can promise you that you and your gown are quite perfect. And as for your mask, it is a work of art. I dare say no one will believe you created such a masterpiece yourself with only a few scraps and feathers." "It was nothing," Catherine disclaimed. "You are too modest, my dear, and as for this ball, well, I know I had my reservations before, but I begin to believe it will be well worth the time and trouble, just for the pleasure of dancing with you and to see you properly admired. Excuse me. You are destined to be heralded as an angel the moment you enter the room and confirmed as one by your behavior before the night is out. Everybody will adore you without exception." "Even your father, do you mean?" "Even my father. He will have no choice." The carriage rolled to a halt. "Now, here we are. Enter the house with your head held high, Catherine, and have no fear. Tonight will be a great triumph." While waiting for Mr. Peabody to open the carriage door and put down the step, Henry considered that perhaps he had laid his praise on a little thick. But Catherine looked much relieved, and that was the important thing. Besides, he thought Catherine was as lovely as any angel. If others could not see it, it was their loss. Henry handed his smiling wife from the carriage, both of them feeling ready to take on the world. At that very same moment, the first sound of thunder pealed in the distance. Dum, dum, dum. And of course, things worse than breaking a plate can happen at a ball.
It was a dark and stormy night.
So it had to be a dark and stormy night, and Halloween besides. So, do we have any questions rolling in, or comments, or
A lot of comments.
discussion?
Everyone's enjoying the readings. They're enjoying them very much. They a lot of interest in the books.
Excellent.
So let me see if there any other. Come on, folks out there, got any
Ask
questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a whole at least 3 minutes to fill, although we can go much longer if we want. We don't have a deadline.
We are at the end of the night. That's true. So
Yeah, we're
we can-
here for the insomniacs.
Right.
Well,
So that,
well, we've celebrated Northanger Abbey, up to the hilt. And I think that might get people to start reading it.
yeah, I hope so. I the reason I write a lot with Austen is that so that people will read Austen. And
Right.
I know a lot of fans came to Austen by virtue of the adaptations, and many of them are very good, some better than others, but none of them hold a candle to Austen's original words. So
Yeah.
I strongly suggest that everybody out there who has not done so, to not just read Pride and Prejudice, but read the entire canon. They're good from top to bottom, including Lady Susan, which I think is a masterpiece. So that's
Well, any Austen is better than just about anything else. So
You're not going to get any argument among the three of us.
true. I'd like to
We're on
remind
the
people-
same page.
But yeah, that it's Jane Austen fan fiction, not Pride and Prejudice fan fiction. So, widen your horizons a little bit.
It's interesting. There are thousands, I think, of sequels to Pride and Prejudice, deservedly so. But we're kind of unique in our Northanger Abbey ones.
Yeah, there aren't very many that I know of.
No, not in years. I can't think of others, actually.
You're definitely more unique with that, but I see a comment over here that says from Angeline saying, going to download all 3 ASAP.
Oh.
So you've reached a few new readers for it today.
There you go.
Yay.
Yeah.
So this has been just delightful hearing about your inspirations for the stories and your selections from them and your insights into Northanger Abbey. And
We were not lost for words.
well, good. All of us writers, what could we do better than words? And here's another comment. I found listening to audiobook of Jane Austen and of Jaff a great experience too. It lets us